Oh, hey, there you are. No, I just couldn't hear anything. Yeah, so I guess I'll be Andy Levy here for a second with our misplaced love affair of Red Eye. I just noticed that you're talking about food deserts. I guess this is Channel 6's issue with downtown. It is repression of minority communities not having access to food. Well, it's amazing that in these so-called food deserts that we have record-breaking obesity. So these are some of the best food deserts in human history. I mean, it's like an argument for American greatness. In our food deserts, people are doing the opposite of starving to death. So, oh boy, this is so. I can't hear you guys really. It was a no-brainer. We might get some cross traffic volume.
Just keep going.
Oh no, you guys go. Where did I interrupt you? Oh, concentration camps. Yeah, there's just a tasteless joke about ADHD here that I'd written down. I won't bother you with it. I did notice here that obesity does kill far more people than bad people with guns do. That's very interesting. That's something that we won't discuss. So I wonder, maybe food deserts are good for some areas, you know, where you have record-breaking obesity. I think Oklahoma is top 5 in the country for obesity, and Americans on average are a third more obese than they were just a generation ago. So you were talking a little bit about Epic and this witch hunt. You know, I was just noting that it is very interesting that they just have these PR campaigns against entities like Epic without anything concrete. And I think David Van just hit it right on the head. They know they just need the innuendo. You know, it's kind of like all these allegations that come about mostly conservative candidates. You know, because when they're accusations against liberal candidates, they're like convictions or they're like witness statements, like, you know, Representative Ellison's, I guess, girlfriend. She basically had a sworn statement to police that he was beating her. I think he was charged with it. So it's not innuendo. It's just like, you know, it's a fact. It's a point of fact. But, you know, with Trump, it's like, or with Kavanaugh, right? The Sweatnik chick was going to parties every weekend where apparently there was gang rape occurring routinely. And she just couldn't stay away from these parties. They were just like the best thing ever, in her opinion. She just was like, wow, it's weird. They just hand out the punch and gang rape. So I'm here every weekend. And she said, well, I saw Kavanaugh standing in the hall kind of near the punch. I bet that means he's guilty. And people are like, well, I believe survivors. But, you know, interesting. These same people won't draw any connection between Bill Clinton traveling to Lolita Island 27 times to Jeffrey Epstein. But Trump traveling not to Lolita Island on the same plane with Epstein. Well, gosh, he's guilty of sex trafficking now. I mean, these people, this is why, I mean, listen, you're going to get sick of hearing this. It's true. Logic is not useful when approaching, it's just really not. There are other tools that we have, not just the tools, although those are useful. They seem to understand the force to defend yourself. It's weird how cowardly the left gets when they know that you're armed. It is so odd. I can't figure that one out. But you know, apparently the entire Antifa army today and leftist coalition, you know, couldn't punch one fascist in the face today because he had a conspicuous firearm. Really weird. They'll hit you over the head with a pipe bender if you're looking the other way and you're not armed. But yeah, that's part of the argument. And I'm not a big fan of open carry personally. I support it legally. Tactically, I wouldn't personally do it, but I know guys like, you know, special forces guys, they think it's deterring, and they're probably right. I mean, you see a mean guy that's conspicuously carrying a weapon, I mean, yeah, you probably don't want to mess with them. So I just noticed here, you know, you're talking about Epic, you know, and the fishing trips in Trump, and you see these this lawfare tactic, you know, these bully tactics of the left. It's the same everywhere, isn't it? It's what they do to Trump, right? They're looking for collusion, which isn't even a crime. Notice the similarity. They're going after Epic charter schools for things that aren't crimes, right? And that's the point, is just to discredit them, right? It sounds bad. And what they're looking for is anything. They're looking for someone who jaywalked in the last 12 years. Here's what's really funny. The Trump administration took some heat for Epstein because, what was it, the labor secretary or something? I think Acosta, he had given a really lenient sentence to Epstein once again, 12 years ago, not under the Trump administration. And now it's Trump's fault because this guy gave Epstein, it's crazy. But then, Trump fires him. So, but once again, Manafort, he didn't pay his taxes or something. Who knows what happened 12 years ago, and now that's Trump's fault, right? That's related to the campaign. But this even happens in Oklahoma. When I ran for Senate, you get people accusing me of not being eligible to vote. Here's the irony. The people that accused me of that were the people most at risk for that. They had just moved into the district, right before the voting began. And I voted there every single time, and I have the evidence. And it's funny because they never bring these through the proper channels, the accusations. They never bring it like a legal challenge or something where you can actually present evidence because they know the claim is enough to disparage some people, from supporting you. And so it's interesting. It's the only place I've ever voted in my life since I was 18. And we now have people in CD5, by the way, who have only voted Democrat running as Republicans. We call those the establishment, right? I mean, they're going to get the same support from the party. The party is required to legally, which is so interesting, right? Isn't this interesting? The Republican Party is a private entity, but the state municipalities get to dictate who is a member of the party and not the party. These people, these literal communists, can come in and register as Republicans, and the state government's going to tell you they must run in your party. I mean, I don't know. It seems completely bizarre to me, but you have, what's her name? Is it Van Sant? Is it, we'll have to investigate this. I'm drawing a blank. There's one of these ladies running in CD5 who's been a registered Democrat their entire life. Who is that?
Oh, I don't want to get rid of you.
Right.
Hey, tell me, I hear you're one round.
Yeah, she's running. I can't hear you that well, but yeah, she's running really, really late, according to the medical staff. But kid's really, really healthy. So to me, it doesn't really bother me. Although I've been going a little bit stir crazy, I've been a bit sequestered, thinking very, very foolishly that this is going to happen like clockwork, and it has not been the case. But it's interesting. You were talking also a little bit later on in the program. You said you were talking about these crimes that are not crimes that people commit. I think it was, and I had to get up and do some things. But this guy with the unregistered guns or whatever, these non-gun crimes. It is so interesting because it's once again, collusion. Collusion, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's not a crime. Collusion with the foreign. I mean, what crime is committed? Even if Trump were guilty, right? That's not. And I think Mueller even said the same thing. Am I right about that? It just sounds bad. Oh, thank you for the hand gestures. The sound is really bad for me. But so what they'll do is they'll run a 2-year-long investigation and cripple your efficacy with it. But when they commit actual crimes, right? When Lois Lerner targets conservatives to deny them their legal 501(c)(3) status, nothing happens. When Eric Holder arrests journalists for not giving up their, it's a literal crime. When you have Hillary Clinton claw hammering evidence in a subpoena, this is illegal, clearly, by all accounts. When you've got Strzok rewriting the account of, negligence, right? What is it? Gross negligence, right? That's the criminal penalty, which we've always heard the phrase, any attorneys out there, that ignorance of the law is no defense. Well, apparently the Secretary of State and one of the preeminent attorneys in the history of the United States, Hillary Clinton, didn't know you couldn't claw hammer records after you've been subpoenaed. So she didn't know that you couldn't just pass along top secret emails, which, by the way, a lot of CIA operatives have died, according to many sources, right? Some even named because of Hillary's loose emails in China. I mean, they had an entire office wiped out. But here we go. So even if you're going to the standard that there's no crime committed unless she had knowledge, Strzok changed the gross negligence to extreme carelessness, which sounds worse. So here we have her breaking the law, and nothing happens to her. Here we have Loretta Lynch talking about her non-existent grandchildren with Hillary Clinton, okay, and evidence that, well, just straight up testimony from Lisa Page and Strzok that they were under instructions that the fix was in. There would be no conviction of Hillary Clinton. My point is, these are obvious crimes of the highest order, and they don't get punished. Tim Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, didn't pay his taxes for a decade, and this was known before he became Treasury Secretary. All right, but what happens to Manafort when they think he's making too much money, but they can't prove it in absolute terms? It's just circumstantial. Well, gosh, he's held in the brig. You've got literal wings of ISIS terrorists in Arizona. Remember they killed the toddler and tried to use voodoo magic to resurrect him as Jesus Christ with, like, Islam magic? You remember that? Those guys got out with bond. But Manafort can't. I mean, it's insane. They commit actual, extreme, conspicuous crimes on the left. They're never held accountable. And then they give you the innuendo of something that sounds bad. It's not even a crime. And then they investigate you like you're trying to bring about the Fourth Reich. And they use that literal language. So, what are we saying here, Tom?
It seems like you're living in a world of reality where the past is connected to your present.
I heard you're living in a world of reality. A sad reality. I don't know. Whatever Tom said. But, well, I mean... Sorry?
Wrap it up.
Okay, I heard that. I think David Van with the phone and said, wrap it up. So, I think I'll close with this. So we had some communists here in the state of Oklahoma. A shocking story. Good on City Politics for reporting this. You had this far-left alliance breaking laws, breaking treason laws, breaking subversion laws, breaking all kinds of laws. Oftentimes they brandish weapons. They're so ignorant of the law, and they're so gross, they're so irresponsible and dangerous. They will have their finger on the trigger of a gun and block, which, by the way, we get some attorneys here. Is Brian Duke here? He's one of the best attorneys I know. I believe that is being met with deadly force. I'm not giving legal advice or anything like that. I believe it is. When someone has their finger on a trigger and they're threatening you to your face, that's deadly. So these folks exist in these spaces committing these acts, and nothing happens to them, right? Where are the troopers? Where are the military police? Where's the National Guard? Okay? You remember where the BLM, the other lefty tool BLM, not Black Lives Matter, the one that came before them, the Bureau of Land Management. They got to take all of Cliven Bundy's rights away from him because the tortoise wanted to crawl across, square centimeters of his land. And so that meant that, they could come there and rough up his family and take his stuff and kill his livestock. I remember a bunch of people didn't like that, and they showed up with guns, and they said, hey, wait. We just want you to lawfully continue with, with your actions here. We don't feel they're lawful. And it's interesting how, a lot of these federal agents got really polite when they're met with guys with guns and said, hey, we're all about the Constitution. We want to have a constitutional proceeding. But what went down just a few years ago, a couple of years, I think that was 2014, that Bundy standoff. In 2016 or 17, you had you had people involved with that the FBI ran down and killed. So I'm sure we'll find these communists breaking the law in a similar way that the Bundys were accused of breaking the law, and these people that came to the defense were breaking. I'm sure we're going to have some of them very violently brought to justice, right, in a couple of years. We're going to have them chased down and perhaps shot to death, while some people say that they might be surrendering, because those are some of the accounts of, I think his name was Finnegan. You guys remember that? And conveniently, I mean, have you heard this one before? The FBI and local police and all of the buildings surrounding the shooting, there was no video footage. So, interesting. I mean, they just lost it. I don't know. They just, who knows? Just got to delete.
Hey, we're going to go ahead and sign off. You can just keep ranting to wife and daughter.
I think we're good here. I think we're good.
Prayers for your family. Everybody's good.
Thank you. Please, I think it's tonight. I mean, they've been saying it for a while, but they really think it's tonight tomorrow. So,
All right. Everybody else.
all right.